Welcome to our video on the history of jazz music. Jazz is a genre of music that originated in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in African American communities in the southern United States. Jazz music is characterized by its improvisation, syncopated rhythms, and swing feel. The origins of jazz music can be traced back to the African American communities in New Orleans, Louisiana. The city was a melting pot of cultures, with African, European, and Caribbean influences. The African American community in New Orleans was known for their music, which included blues, ragtime, and gospel. One of the earliest forms of jazz music was Dixieland, which emerged in the early 1900s. Dixieland jazz was characterized by its use of brass instruments, such as the trumpet, trombone, and clarinet, and its improvisation. Jazz music quickly spread throughout the United States, with musicians from New Orleans traveling to other cities to perform. Jazz bands became popular in dance halls and nightclubs, and jazz music was played on radio stations across the country. In the 1920s, jazz music underwent a transformation with the emergence of the swing era. Swing music was characterized by its use of big bands, which included multiple brass and woodwind instruments, and its emphasis on rhythm and dance. Jazz music continued to evolve throughout the 20th century, with the emergence of bebop, cool jazz, and fusion. Today, jazz music remains a popular genre, with musicians from around the world continuing to push the boundaries of the genre. That concludes our first segment on the origins of jazz music. Join us for our next segment, where we will explore the impact of jazz music on American culture. Welcome back to our video on the history of jazz music. In this segment, we will explore the impact of jazz music on American culture. Jazz music played a significant role in the cultural and social changes that occurred in the United States during the 20th century. Jazz music was a symbol of rebellion and freedom, and it challenged the social norms of the time. During the 1920s, the era of the Harlem Renaissance, jazz music became a symbol of African American culture. Jazz musicians such as Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and Bessie Smith became cultural icons, and their music helped to break down racial barriers. Jazz music also played a significant role in the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Jazz musicians such as Nina Simone and Max Roach used their music to express their political views and to support the movement. Jazz music also had a significant impact on popular culture. Jazz music was featured in films, television shows, and commercials, and it influenced other genres of music such as rock and roll and hip-hop. Jazz music also had a significant impact on the art world. Jazz musicians such as Miles Davis and John Coltrane collaborated with artists such as Jackson Pollock and Willem de Kooning, and their music inspired the abstract expressionist movement. In conclusion, jazz music played a significant role in American culture during the 20th century. Jazz music challenged social norms, broke down racial barriers, and influenced popular culture and the art world. Join us for our next segment, where we will explore the different styles of jazz music. Welcome back to our video on the history of jazz music. In this segment, we will explore the different styles of jazz music. Jazz music has evolved over time, and there are many different styles of jazz music. Some of the most popular styles of jazz music include 1. Dixieland. Dixieland jazz is one of the earliest forms of jazz music. It emerged in the early 1900s in New Orleans and is characterized by its use of brass instruments and improvisation. 2. Swing. Swing music emerged in the 1920s and is characterized by its use of big bands and its emphasis on rhythm and dance. 3. Bebop. Bebop emerged in the 1940s and is characterized by its complex harmonies and fast tempos. Bebop musicians often use improvisation to create intricate melodies. 4. Cool jazz. Cool jazz emerged in the 1950s and is characterized by its relaxed, laid-back style. Cool jazz musicians often use slow tempos and softer tones. 5. Fusion. Fusion emerged in the 1960s and is characterized by its fusion of jazz and rock music. Fusion musicians often used electric instruments and experimented with different rhythms and time signatures. These are just a few of the many different styles of jazz music. Jazz musicians continue to push the boundaries of the genre, and new styles of jazz music continue to emerge. In conclusion, jazz music is a diverse and ever-evolving genre of music. Jazz musicians have created many different styles of jazz music, each with its own unique characteristics and influences. Join us for our next segment, where we will explore some of the most influential jazz musicians of all time. Welcome back to our video on the history of jazz music. In this segment, we will explore some of the most influential jazz musicians of all time. 1. Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong is one of the most influential jazz musicians of all time. He was a trumpeter, singer, and bandleader who helped to popularize jazz music in the 1920s and 1930s. Armstrong's unique style of playing the trumpet and his distinctive voice made him a cultural icon. 2. Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington was a pianist, composer, and bandleader who helped to shape the sound of jazz music in the 1920s and 1930s. Ellington's big band music was characterized by its use of complex harmonies and arrangements. 3. Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was a saxophonist and composer who helped to pioneer the bebop style of jazz music in the 1940s. Parker's fast, virtuosic playing and complex melodies influenced generations of jazz musicians. 4. Miles Davis. Miles Davis was a trumpeter, composer, and bandleader who helped to shape the sound of jazz music in the 1950s and 1960s. Davis was known for his innovative use of modal jazz and his collaborations with other musicians. 5. John Coltrane. John Coltrane was a saxophonist and composer who helped to push the boundaries of jazz music in the 1960s. Coltrane's use of complex harmonies and his experiments with free jazz and avant-garde music influenced generations of jazz musicians. These are just a few of the many influential jazz musicians who have helped to shape the sound of jazz music over the years. Jazz music continues to evolve, and new musicians continue to push the boundaries of the genre. Join us for our final segment, where we will explore the future of jazz music. Welcome back to our final segment on the history of jazz music. In this segment, we will explore the future of jazz music. Jazz music has always been an evolving genre, and it continues to evolve today. Jazz musicians are constantly pushing the boundaries of the genre, experimenting with new sounds and styles. One of the most exciting developments in jazz music today is the fusion of jazz with other genres of music. Jazz musicians are collaborating with musicians from other genres, such as hip-hop and electronic music, to create new and innovative sounds. Another exciting development in jazz music is the emergence of new voices and perspectives. Jazz musicians from around the world are bringing their own unique cultural influences to the genre, creating a more diverse and inclusive jazz community. Technology is also playing a significant role in the future of jazz music. Jazz musicians are using new technologies to create and distribute their music, and new platforms are emerging to connect jazz musicians with audiences around the world. In conclusion, the future of jazz music is bright and exciting. Jazz musicians are continuing to push the boundaries of the genre, experimenting with new sounds and styles, and bringing new voices and perspectives to the jazz community. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of jazz music. We hope you have enjoyed learning about this rich and vibrant genre of music.